There's a moment that happens to all of us. A moment so quiet, so unremarkable, that we rarely stop to notice it. It's your mind, after all. It's the voice inside your head that's been with you since the beginning, the one that's gotten you this far, the one that feels like you. But here's what most people never realize until it's too late: that voice isn't always on your side. In fact, there are specific moments, precise, predictable situations where your mind becomes your greatest deceiver, where it stops being your ally and transforms into something far more dangerous: a saboteur, a liar, a manipulator who knows exactly which buttons to push because it built those buttons in the first place. Think about the last time you made a decision you later regretted. Not a small one, a real one. The kind that made you wake up weeks or months later and ask yourself, "What was I thinking?" Now go back to that moment. That split second before you decided. What were you feeling? Were you anxious, angry, exhausted, hopeful, afraid? Because here's the truth they don't teach you in school. The truth that most people spend their entire lives never understanding. Your mind doesn't operate in a vacuum. It's not some neutral, rational machine that weighs evidence and spits out logical conclusions. It's a biological organism shaped by millions of years of evolution, and its primary job, its only job, really is to keep you alive. Not to make you happy, not to make you successful, not to help you make the right choice, just alive. And sometimes keeping you alive means lying to you. It means distorting reality. It means making you see threats that don't exist and opportunities that were never there. It means hijacking your perception of the world and twisting it into something that serves its ancient primal agenda. This isn't a flaw in the system, it's the system. Your mind is doing exactly what it was designed to do. The problem is that the world it was designed for, the world of predators and scarcity and immediate physical danger, doesn't exist anymore. But your mind hasn't gotten the memo. It's still operating on software that's thousands of years out of date, trying to navigate a reality it was never built to understand. And in certain situations, specific situations that we're about to explore, that outdated software doesn't just fail. It actively works against you. It turns your own thoughts into weapons pointed directly at your future. The scary part, the 5 moments where you should never, ever trust what your mind is telling you. Where the voice in your head stops being your guide and becomes your enemy. Where trusting yourself is the most dangerous thing you can do. These aren't obvious moments. They don't come with warning signs or flashing lights. They feel normal, natural, like any other moment in your day, and that's exactly what makes them so lethal. The first situation is this: never trust your mind when you're tired. Not just sleepy, not just, "I could use a coffee" tired. I'm talking about that bone-deep exhaustion that comes from days or weeks of accumulated fatigue, when your body is running on fumes and your mind is held together by nothing but caffeine and sheer willpower. Because in that state, something terrifying happens to your brain. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for rational thinking, impulse control, and long-term planning, starts to shut down. It's like watching the lights go out in a building, floor by floor, until only the basement is left running. And what lives in the basement of your mind? The ancient stuff. The primitive, reactive, emotional stuff that doesn't think in terms of consequences or future outcomes. It thinks in terms of now, right now. This very second. When you're exhausted, your mind doesn't have the energy to do the hard work of rational decision-making, so it takes shortcuts, dangerous shortcuts. It starts looking for the easiest, fastest solution to whatever problem is in front of you. And the easiest solution is almost never the right one. This is why you send that angry email at 11 o'clock at night that you regret by 8 in the morning. This is why you agree to things you'd never agree to when you're rested. This is why you pick fights with people you love, say things you don't mean, make promises you can't keep. Because your tired mind is essentially a different person. A worse version of you. A version that's all impulse and emotion and zero foresight. And here's the truly insidious part. That tired version of you doesn't feel impaired. It feels fine. It feels like you. The exhaustion doesn't announce itself as a disability. It disguises itself as clarity, as conviction, as finally having the courage to say what you really think or do what you really want. But it's not courage. It's cognitive failure masquerading as authenticity. Studies have shown that people who are sleep-deprived perform just as poorly on cognitive tasks as people who are legally drunk. Think about that. Would you trust a drunk person to make an important decision for you? Would you let them negotiate a contract, end a relationship, choose a career path, decide whether to send that text message? Of course not. And yet we trust our exhausted minds to do exactly that every single day. We make life-altering decisions at the end of 12-hour workdays. We have crucial conversations at midnight. We commit to things, quit things, start things, end things, all while our brains are operating at maybe 60% capacity, and then we act surprised when it all falls apart. The truth is, when you're tired, you're not yourself. You're a compromised version of yourself. And that version should have absolutely no authority over your life. The second situation is even more dangerous because it's harder to recognize. Never trust your mind when you're making decisions based on fear. Not the healthy kind of fear that keeps you from stepping in front of a bus. I'm talking about the existential fear. The fear of missing out. The fear of being left behind. The fear of making the wrong choice. The fear that whispers, everyone else is doing it, so maybe you should too. Or worse, if you don't do this right now, you'll regret it forever. Because fear doesn't just cloud your judgment, it hijacks it completely. It takes over the decision-making process and makes choices that have nothing to do with what you actually want and everything to do with avoiding the thing you're afraid of. Here's how it works. When your brain perceives a threat real or imagined, it triggers the amygdala, a tiny almond-shaped structure deep in your limbic system. The amygdala's job is to sound the alarm, to flood your body with stress hormones, to prepare you for fight or flight. And when that alarm is ringing, your prefrontal cortex, the rational part, remember, gets suppressed. Your brain literally reduces blood flow to the areas responsible for logic and increases it to the areas responsible for survival. This made perfect sense when the threat was a tiger. You didn't need to think, you needed to run. But in the modern world, most of our fears aren't tigers. They're social threats, professional threats, emotional threats, the fear of embarrassment, the fear of failure, the fear of being alone, and your brain can't tell the difference. It treats a potential rejection the same way it would treat a predator. It panics. And when your brain panics, it makes terrible decisions. Think about the last time you bought something you didn't need because you were afraid it would sell out. The last time you said yes to an opportunity, not because you wanted it, but because you were afraid of what people would think if you said no. The last time you stayed in a relationship longer than you should have because you were terrified of being alone. That was your fear. That was your amygdala overriding your rational mind and forcing you into a corner. And the worst part is that fear-based decisions almost always feel urgent. They come with this overwhelming sense that you have to decide right now, this very second, or the opportunity will disappear forever. But that urgency is a lie. It's your brain trying to force you into action before you have time to think. Because if you actually had time to think, you'd realize that most of the things you're afraid of aren't real threats at all. They're just uncomfortable possibilities, and there's a world of difference between those two things. The third situation is subtler, but just as deadly. Never trust your mind when you're angry. Not frustrated, not annoyed, angry. That white-hot, visceral anger that makes your heart pound and your hands shake and your vision narrow to a single point. Because anger, like fear, is an emotional hijacking. It's your brain's way of preparing you for conflict. And in that state, your mind doesn't care about truth. It doesn't care about fairness. It doesn't care about long-term consequences. It cares about one thing: winning, dominating, making the other person feel as bad as you feel. And it will do anything to achieve that goal, including distorting reality beyond recognition. When you're angry, your mind becomes a lawyer for your rage. It starts building a case. It digs through your memory, selectively pulling out every piece of evidence that supports your anger and conveniently forgetting anything that contradicts it. That person who just cut you off in traffic? Your angry mind doesn't see a distracted driver who made a mistake. It sees a malicious villain who did it on purpose, who probably does this to everyone, who represents everything wrong with society. Your partner who forgot to call you back? Your angry mind doesn't see someone who got busy or forgot. It sees someone who doesn't care, who never cared, who has been disrespecting you all along, and this is just the latest example in a long pattern of betrayal. None of this is rational. None of it is fair. But in the moment, it feels absolutely, undeniably true. Because your angry mind isn't interested in accuracy. It's interested in justification. It wants to prove that your anger is righteous, that you're the victim, that whatever you're about to say or do is completely warranted. This is why people say things in anger that they can never take back. Why relationships end over arguments that started over nothing. Why careers implode because of an email sent in a moment of rage. Because when you're angry, you're not operating from your highest self. You're operating from your most primitive self. The part that wants to hurt because it's been hurt. the part that wants revenge, the part that believes, truly believes, that if you can just make the other person understand how wrong they are, everything will be okay. It takes small conflicts and turns them into wars. And your mind, when it's flooded with anger, will do everything in its power to push you toward escalation. It will make you feel strong when you're actually at your weakest. It will make you feel righteous when you're being cruel. It will convince you that this is the moment to finally say what you really think, to finally stand up for yourself, to finally make them pay. And by the time the anger fades and you see the wreckage you've created, it's too late.